You pulled out your phone this morning probably before you even got out of bed, and within 30 seconds, you were looking at someone's vacation in Santorini, someone else's new car, and a girl from your high school who apparently just bought a house at 26. And you didn't close the app feeling inspired. You closed it feeling like you were somehow behind, like you were losing a race you didn't even sign up for. Sound familiar? My name is Smith, and I spend way too much time thinking about the psychology behind why smart, hardworking people are completely broke. If you're someone who feels financially anxious every time you open Instagram or TikTok, not because you lost money, but because someone else seems to have more of it, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because this one is going to change the way you think about money forever. Let's talk about the comparison trap. And I want to be clear right from the jump, this isn't a video where I tell you to delete social media and live like a monk. That's not realistic. And honestly, that advice misses the point entirely. The problem isn't the app on your phone. The problem is what that app is doing to your financial decision making without you even realizing it. And once I show you the math behind what this one psychological pattern is costing your generation, I promise you will never scroll the same way again. Here's the thing. Humans have been comparing themselves to other people for thousands of years. It's literally wired into us. Psychologists call it social comparison theory, and it was first described by a researcher named Leon Festinger back in 1954. His basic finding was that human beings have a natural drive to evaluate their own opinions, abilities, and critically their status by comparing themselves to others. This was fine when others meant the 40 people in your village. You could see exactly what your neighbor had, you knew how they got it, and the comparison was grounded in reality. Now your village is 300 million people. And here's what most people don't realize. It's not even a real village. It's a highlight reel, a curated, filtered, strategically timed performance of the best 15% of everyone's life. And your brain doesn't know the difference. Your brain is running ancient software, trying to process a completely artificial social landscape, and it is getting absolutely wrecked in the process. Here's where it gets interesting. There's a specific type of social comparison that does the most damage, and it's called upward social comparison. That's when you compare yourself to people who appear to be doing better than you. And research from the University of Michigan found that the more time people spend on social media, specifically scrolling, the worse they feel about their own financial situation, even when their actual financial situation hasn't changed at all. Read that again. Your bank account didn't move, your salary didn't change, but you feel poorer because of a picture someone posted. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Smith, I know Instagram isn't real. I'm not actually affected by this. And to that I say, respectfully, yes, you are. Because this isn't about what you consciously believe. This is about what your behavior reveals. And the data here is damning. A study from the National Endowment for Financial Education found that nearly 40% of Americans have gone into debt to keep up with a lifestyle they saw friends or peers living on social media or in person. 40%. And according to a 2023 survey by Credit Karma, millennials and Gen Z are spending an average of $250 more than they can afford, not on necessities, not on emergencies, on discretionary spending, driven by social influence. $250 a month. Let's do the math on that right now, because I need you to feel this number. $250 a month invested instead of spent in a basic index fund averaging 8% annual return. In 10 years, that's $45,000. In 20 years, that's $148,000. In 30 years, and this is where I need you to sit with this, in 30 years, that's $340,000. Gone. Not because you made a bad investment, not because the economy crashed, because you bought things you didn't need to impress people you don't particularly like to match a lifestyle you couldn't actually afford. That's the true cost of the comparison trap. Not the handbag, not the dinner, the $300,000 you never built. Now look, I'm not going to stand here and pretend this is simple, because it's not about willpower. People who fall into the comparison trap aren't stupid or weak, they're human. And the reason this pattern is so hard to break is because it's being deliberately engineered. Let's talk about what's actually happening behind that screen. The social media platforms you use every day are built by teams of the smartest engineers and behavioral psychologists on the planet, and their entire job is to make sure the app creates just enough emotional discomfort to keep you engaged. They know, because they have the research to prove it, that content which triggers upward social comparison generates more engagement than content that makes you feel good about yourself. Slightly anxious is more addictive than happy. So the algorithm isn't showing you your friend's boring Tuesday. It's showing you their birthday trip to Tulum. It's showing you their engagement ring, their new apartment, their salary milestone. Not by accident, by design. You are not the customer. You are the product. And the emotion they're selling to advertisers is your insecurity. Here's the thing though, and this is the part that should make you genuinely angry. That insecurity doesn't stay on the app. It follows you to the mall. It follows you to the car dealership. It follows you to the restaurant where you order the expensive bottle because there's a chance someone might post about it. A 2022 report from Bain & Company found that social media influence is now the #1 driver of luxury goods purchases among consumers under 35. Not aspiration, not quality, not even genuine desire. Influence. Someone else had it, so now you want it. And your brain has constructed a story about why you need it and deserve it. And it's actually a smart financial decision. And every bit of that story was written for you by a combination of algorithmic content curation and targeted advertising that knows more about your insecurities than you do. This is where it gets really psychological. There's a concept called hedonic adaptation, and it's probably the most important and most ignored idea in personal finance. Here's how it works. You want the thing. You work toward the thing. You get the thing. You feel great for somewhere between 2 days and 2 weeks. And then, without any conscious decision on your part, the thing becomes normal. It becomes the new baseline, and you're back to wanting the next thing. The fancy apartment isn't exciting anymore. It's just where you live. The car doesn't give you that feeling anymore. It's just how you get to work. And because your brain has now reset to a higher baseline, everything below that baseline feels like a loss. You are on a treadmill that only moves forward, and it costs you money every single time it does. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but some of the people I'm comparing myself to actually do have that lifestyle. It's not fake. And you're right, some of it isn't. But here's what most people don't realize about the people whose lifestyle looks most aspirational online. A significant portion of them are financing that lifestyle with debt. The Federal Reserve's 2023 Consumer Finance Report showed that the average American between 25 and 34 carries over $40,000 in non-mortgage debt. The American Psychological Association found that money is the leading source of stress for adults under 35, more than work, more than relationships, more than health. The people posting the vacations are often paying for them on credit cards at 24% interest. The person in the new car is 3 years into a 7-year loan on a vehicle that's already worth less than they owe. The lifestyle you're comparing yourself to is, in many cases, a debt-funded illusion, and you are potentially destroying your actual financial future trying to replicate something that was never financially sustainable in the first place. Let me tell you about a guy I'll call Marcus. 28 years old, making $65,000 a year, living in a mid-sized city. By any objective measure, Marcus is doing reasonably well. He has a job he doesn't hate, an apartment in a decent neighborhood, and he puts a little money away each month. But Marcus spends about 2 hours a day on Instagram and TikTok, and over the past 3 years, his spending has quietly drifted upward in ways he hasn't fully tracked. He upgraded his apartment last year because his feed made his old one feel embarrassing. He started eating at nicer restaurants because the places he used to like didn't look right in photos. He bought a car he technically couldn't afford because everyone he saw on social media seemed to drive something nice. None of these individual decisions felt dramatic. Each one had a perfectly rational justification in the moment. But here's what Marcus hasn't done in 3 years. He hasn't increased his retirement contributions. He hasn't built an emergency fund above $1,000. He hasn't paid down the $6,200 sitting on his credit card. And at 28, with compound interest working against him on that debt and not yet working for him in meaningful investments, Marcus is in a much harder position than his income would suggest. Not because of one bad decision, because of 3 years of small decisions made in response to a feeling that was manufactured and delivered to him through a screen. Marcus isn't unusual. Marcus is the median case. So what do we actually do about this? Because awareness alone doesn't change behavior. If it did, nobody would smoke cigarettes. You need systems, and you need them to be specific. Here's the first thing. You need to audit your social feed the same way you'd audit your expenses. If you did a detailed breakdown of where every dollar went last month, you'd be shocked. Most people are. Now apply that same energy to your feed. Go through who you follow and ask one simple question. Does following this person make me feel better or worse about my own life and financial situation? Not whether you like them as a person, not whether their content is objectively good, whether the consistent experience of seeing their life makes you feel inadequate about yours. Unfollow aggressively, not out of bitterness, out of self-preservation. Your attention is a financial asset, and you should be as protective of it as you are of your money. The second thing, before any purchase over $50, and I mean any purchase, I want you to identify the social driver. Ask yourself honestly, would I still want this if no one would ever know I had it? If the answer is no, or even if the answer is I'm not sure, that's data. That doesn't mean you can't buy it, but it means you should wait 72 hours. Research consistently shows that the emotional urgency behind comparison-driven purchases drops dramatically within 3 days. If you still want it after 72 hours and it fits your budget, go ahead. But you will be stunned by how often the desire completely evaporates. Third, and this is the one people resist the most, you need to build what I call a financial identity anchor. Here's the thing about comparison. It only has power over you when your identity is undefined. When you don't have a clear, specific financial goal that you're emotionally connected to, you are vulnerable to adopting whatever financial identity your feed is selling you. But when you have a goal, a real one with a number and a timeline, and you think about your money in terms of that goal, the comparison loses its grip. You stop thinking about whether your apartment is as nice as someone else's, and you start thinking about whether your spending is aligned with getting to financial independence by 42. Those are two completely different frames of mind, and only one of them will actually get you somewhere. Write down one financial goal right now. Not a vague intention like save more money, a specific goal with a specific number. I want $50,000 invested by age 32. I want to be completely debt-free by the time I'm 30. I want a 6-month emergency fund within 18 months. Put that number somewhere you see it every day. On your phone lock screen, on a sticky note next to your laptop. Make it real and make it visible, because what you consistently see shapes what you consistently do. And here's the final thing I want to leave you with, because I think it might be the most important idea in this entire video. The comparison trap isn't just making you anxious and overspending. It's stealing something much bigger than money. It's stealing your ability to measure your own progress. When your reference point is constantly other people, people who are at different stages, different incomes, different family circumstances, often performing a version of wealth they don't actually have, you lose the ability to see how far you've actually come. You run a marathon, and instead of measuring how much faster you've gotten, you're upset because someone else crossed the finish line first. That's not a financial strategy. That's not even a life strategy. That's just a way to guarantee you never feel like you're winning, regardless of how much you actually achieve. The most financially successful people I know share one characteristic more than any other. They are almost completely indifferent to what other people think of their financial choices. Not because they're antisocial or they don't care about relationships, but because they decided at some point that the only scoreboard that mattered was the one they built themselves.
their net worth, their freedom, their timeline to never having to work a job they don't want. That's the game they're playing. And they don't care if your Instagram makes them feel behind, because they know exactly where they are in the game they actually chose. You get to choose that too, right now, today. Stop competing in a race that was designed to keep you broke, keep you anxious, and keep you scrolling. Build the financial life you actually want, not the one that looks best in someone else's feed. Because nobody posts their net worth statement. Nobody shows you their debt payoff graph. Nobody makes a reel about the morning they realize they had enough money to never be afraid again. But that moment, that quiet, private, completely unphotographable moment of genuine financial security, that's the only flex that actually matters. I'm Smith. Go build something real.